I'll be having very interesting guests who have personal stories to tell to the world. Welcome to MNB World Talk Show. Hello there, welcome to MNB World Talk Show. Today's guest thinks she is lucky girl, but I'm not sure she's lucky, fortunate, or it's just a destiny. Well, today's guest is the Deputy Head of British School of Ulaanbaatar. Miss Indra Batbayar. Let's welcome her. Hello, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Have a seat.
Thank you.
Well, I have all these letters of yours that you received. And from all this, I see that you have so many friends.
Yes, I'm blessed to have very many good friends.
And then I want to start our talk with your life in abroad, how it started. So around 2000, early 2000, Mongolian diplomat, Onung, sort of, right? Which is your mother, went to Belgium to represent Mongolia there. And that was your mother.
Yeah.
And it was your first time living in abroad. So tell us about the experience, how it was big adaptation process.
Yeah, certainly the first time I lived abroad for an extended period of time is when I joined my mother to live in Brussels, and that was in 2001. Prior to that, between 1999 and 2000, I actually did live for 1 year in London when my mom was doing her master's degree at the London School of Economics. So I've had a brief period of time.
Experience before
brief
that.
experience that. However, the time that I spent in Belgium was about 3 years. So in 2001, I joined St. John's International School. Whereby all the...
it was high school, right?
It was a high school, yes.
You were a high school
It was a high school whereby it was an international baccalaureate curriculum, which is world recognized and accepted. And I lived and studied in Belgium for 3 years before, and afterwards I was admitted to university in Canada, in Ottawa, Ontario, to the Carleton University, where I did my bachelor's degree in public administration.
Well, yeah, I want to ask about the experience, the Belgium experience. You know, how was it to really, like, all of a sudden you had to change your environment from Mongolian to Belgium? Did you miss your friends? Because I see so many friends' letters saying that they miss you from Mongolia.
Yeah. I actually had first entered school number 23 in Ulaanbaatar, which is a language specialized school, when I was 7 years old. So all of the friends that I have in Mongolia currently, they root back to my school. So obviously I've bonded with them, I've studied with them for about 8 or 9 years, and then in my teenage years I've had to relocate abroad. And of course it was challenging in the sense that, you know, you're a growing teenager, you don't have your friends nearby, and you're attending a completely different school with different teachers in a different language in a different country. So what we used to do is we used to send each other a lot of letters, handwritten letters, which are very
precious. Because by the time email wasn't so popular.
It wasn't so popular. Whilst there were email accounts being created, you know, not everyone had a computer at home, or not everyone was able to have internet at home. So there used to be internet cafes, if you remember. So a lot of my friends did spend some time in internet cafes, but we used to write each other letters. And when I received the invitation to come and speak, you know, talk with you at the talk show, I wanted to share something that's very precious, which may seem a little bit unique to some of the younger generation, especially.
Oh yes, of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there was a lot of handwritten letters, and also we'll probably discuss about it later. But there's also like a booklet whereby everyone wrote their memories. You
have studied the public administration in Canada. So your major was public administration, but you started working in a savings bank when you came back to Mongolia, right? And why was it? that.
Yeah,
Totally different field.
it has. Yeah, it was a very different field, and the very first reason why I pursued my education, my bachelor's degree for public administration, is that both of my parents have worked for an extended period of time for the civil service. My mom is a career diplomat. My dad used to work at the Civil Service Council, and as such, it was a very familiar setting for me, and it made me feel like, okay, this is the path that I would want to pursue, because seeing the success and the contributions of my parents, it inspired me to a certain extent. However, when I returned back to Mongolia, it became apparent in that in order to work for the civil service, you need to be fluent in your language, you need to correctly express yourself in Mongolian, etc. So what I wanted to do is, I was a recent graduate and I needed experience. Right. So using my language skills, but as well as in order to become familiar with the work culture, I joined the savings bank as a foreign relations manager in the first instance. It was in 2009.
And you even got promoted to head of the what sector?
I worked at the savings bank, which later became the state bank, for about over 4 years. And during that period, I started off as a foreign relations manager. Then I became the acting head of the department. Right. And thanks to a very good mentor, whom I was very fortunate to have, I was being recognized, and it facilitated my promotion. And my last post that I had held with Savings Bank and State Bank was the head of the marketing department.
So you just mentioned the mentor. Would you mind telling the name of the mentor? And like, how did he or she mentor you? Like, in what way? Was the mentor Mongolian? Was it a woman, man?
When I first joined the Foreign Relations Department, there was a gentleman named Mr. Bayan. He himself was a young professional also, and me coming as a recent graduate with little to no experience, he was very welcoming to me, and he actually took a lot of time in explaining the importance of certain, why things need to be done the certain way. He was very patient. But also, there's another individual whom I would like to highlight, is also Mr. Sandukdorj, who was also deputy head at the bank at that time. And those two individuals had very different characteristics. One was very patient, very calm. The other individual consistently used to challenge me all of the time.
So lecture you all the time, right?
Yeah, but in retrospect, when I look back, both of the advice that both of them have given to me were extremely invaluable. And for example, being educated abroad, then when you come to Mongolia, you're unfamiliar with the surrounding and the work culture.
Exactly.
So where we started off was I was being taught on how to properly write a written letter.
In Mongolian.
In Mongolian, yeah. And then there would be even events where I would have to go to the public service authorities to get some services done. And as you are aware, there's certain bureaucracies, and you need to navigate the environment.
Right. After you come back to Mongolia, after studying abroad, I think for me it took like 2 years, 2 or 3 years to be really grounded and get used to readapt to Mongolian environment again, right?
Yes. And
so those people really helped you?
Yes, they did. But also I think because I did spend a lot of time, majority of my high school time in Mongolian school, I think the foundations that were laid in terms of my Mongolian language were strong. So to that, I'm also very grateful to my primary teacher. So when you have a strong foundation, I think it's easier to sort of work on it and become better. So there are a lot of people who I'm very grateful for.
You've got tuning scholarship, which is UK government scholarship, right?
Yes.
You were one of the tunings.
Yes.
And you chose global innovation.
That's correct.
Why global innovation?
So I was
was it you who chose the major this time?
I did. Yeah.
Okay.
When I applied for the Tuning Scholarship, I applied in 2013, and it's a 1-year process whereby you go through the selection criteria. And before you make your application, you need to determine which degree you want to pursue. And that was when I was still working at the bank. I had worked in foreign relations, I had worked in marketing, and I felt like I needed to develop even further to promote my career. And at that time, in Mongolia, it hasn't become very widespread yet, but people were starting to talk about the innovation. And although in the tuning scholarship it wasn't a priority area, after a considerable amount of research, to me it became apparent that for a landlocked country located between Russia and Mongolia with only 3 million people, very remotely populated, you need to be innovative to succeed. Which is the reason why I pursued global innovation management. So this degree in itself is not so much like technological innovation, etc., but it's how in terms of innovation in terms of management. So how can you merge two things to become even more efficient? How can you manage things so that it reduces, drives down costs or enhances efficiency?
So it focuses in the management.
Yes.
More of a management,
yes.
Not to come up with new product.
No, not in my case.
New ingredients. Or that kind of stuff.
No.
Well, you know, as soon as hear innovation, that kind of thing pops in my head. So, and after tuning, well, let's talk about the times you studied in UK. What was the most challenging thing?
Well, in the UK, I'd say when I was studying abroad, I think the most challenging time was not so much in the UK, but it was in Canada when I did my bachelor's degree. In the UK, it was a fully funded scholarship. The tuning scholarship is very generous. You know, you don't have to work. It provides you with subsistence. It provides you with the tuition fee, etc. So it was purely focused on learning. It was 12 months of intense learning.
You didn't even have to work?
We didn't even have to work.
Wow. Okay.
It was a personal choice, but you could comfortably, you can do comfortably well without having to work. However, when I left to Canada, when I left my home, when I left my mom in Belgium, and then when I pursued my studies in Canada, that was the time I sort of had to challenge myself, like put myself up for a challenge, because...
What kind of challenge?
Well, I think a lot of people who had worked and lived abroad can relate to me, but at home, you know, I was relatively spoiled. I had a very comfortable lifestyle, but when I went to Canada, obviously I'd had to work part-time so that I can, my tuition I received a scholarship for, and my parents did used to send me some subsistence money, but you know, there's lots of expenses where you have to buy your textbooks and you have to pay your rent, and I was in charge of paying my own rent, which meant I had to work hourly jobs. And it was the first time I became familiar with the service industry, whereby you are serving people. And obviously
waitress?
It wasn't a waitress, but it was a smoothie bar, whereby it's a franchise, so you know, there's different protocols that you need to follow, etc., etc. And you know, you get to interact with very different people, random people. And in it, you have some difficult customers, you have some very grateful, thankful customers, but there will be times where, you know, sort of you'll be washing the dishes, or you'll be like mopping the floor, and you're like, life was so good at home.
So student life, that is student life, right?
But I think everyone, most of the people who have lived abroad sort of overcame that challenge and were able to succeed further. So it's a good memory.
Well, Miss Indra, you are a big dog person. You're a dog lover, right?
Not only dogs, because I've always had animals from my childhood. And there would be times where my mom and dad's co-workers would come and visit our house with their children to visit like the mini zoo that we used to have at our house. Yeah, because there was a point where at the same time I had parrots, I had a turtle, hamsters, fishes, and 2 dogs.
At the same time?
At the same time.
In one household?
Yeah.
Wow, how could you like...
that was because
one do that?
That was when I was still attending my school number 23 in Mongolia. So in Mongolia, when I had a lot of free time so that I can look after my pets. But then later, when I went abroad, and the animals sort of passed away due to old age. It's been a very long time since we haven't had any pets. But both of my parents, you know, everyone loves animals a lot. And in fact, I think if I hadn't chosen this career, I used to think that, you know, I might have become quite a successful veterinarian.
Veterinarian?
Yeah,
wow.
that's another thought that I always had in my mind. But I think at this point, it's a bit too late to do a career change. But it's been a long time since we had dogs, and 2.5 years ago we've obtained Leo, who's a...
I was going to say that.
Who is a Great Dane.
Leo, the Great Dane.
Yes. He's the second largest dog breed.
Second largest dog breed?
Yes.
In the whole wide world?
Yes, amongst all dog breeds. So currently he weighs about 80 kilos. So
80 kilos, wow, huge. It's a he or she?
He's a boy.
He's a boy?
Yeah.
Well, we have prepared a small package about dog Leo and her. Let's take a look at that.
So Leo is a rightful member of our family. He's got all the rights and privileges of being our family member, and all of my family takes the time to look after him. It allows us to be active and spend some quality time outdoors. But also the family environment at home is very warm because we all have a common interest, and we like to share about stories and experiences we've had with him through the day, and it just makes the family atmosphere very warm. So Leo and I like to take part in competitions, and every year there's an annual Mongolian National Dog Show that we participate in. 2017 was the first time we participated in a dog show, and Leo was able to get 2 gold medals from it, which was a huge accomplishment, and we were very proud of him for the first year. And then we also took place in this year's competition as well, where he got a silver medal, but there's also several other competitions which are organized by in between dog clubs that we were able to participate successfully as well. And I believe that as a hobby, it's also good to sort of, by participating in dog shows, you're able to evaluate the work and the time you're spending with your dog and how it relates to you can compare it to the other dogs of the same breed. And I think in one way it also gives you a sense of what you might be doing right and what you need to do better. So we do enjoy taking part in dog shows as well.
Through our talk show, we will bring you entertaining personal talks with certain individuals. These individuals will be divided in 2 categories. Number 1 is I Am Mongolian. In this category, guests will be proud Mongolians who have stories to tell to the world. Number 2 is I Love Mongolia. Through these talks, we will introduce expats and non-Mongolians who are related to Mongolia one way or another. Heartfelt stories of their love affair with Mongolia, the land of blue sky. Wow, I have never seen a dog like that. Well, I mean, there are Tibetan Mastiffs, but he is huge.
Yeah.
80 kilos, right?
Yeah.
Wow. So let's talk about your current job.
Mm-hmm.
You are working as a deputy head of the British School of Ulaanbaatar.
Mm-hmm.
And why did you choose education field?
When I came back to Mongolia after I finished my degree, I wasn't completely sure about where I would like to work.
Yeah, because of the innovation, it can apply to
Yeah,
anything,
to a
right?
lot of Mongolian companies, it sounded new too, because they would always ask me, so what specifically does the innovation manager do? And a lot of them, there were 2 companies that I interviewed with, and I felt like after following the interview, I felt like I would not probably be utilizing all of my skill set in this situation, which is when the British School of Ulaanbaatar opportunity presented itself.
It was time 2013, 14?
2015, I came back
15?
in. Yeah.
The
So
economy was quite
wasn't so
crisis.
great.
Wasn't so great.
Wasn't so great, and especially in areas like business development or product development, global innovation management was sort of on the back burner for many of the companies. However, being fortunate enough to receive the UK government scholarship, the Chevening scholarship, as part of when I was accepting the terms and conditions, there are, obviously if you have taken something, it's nice to give something back.
Right,
and
exactly.
the role of the Chevening scholarship is to improve bilateral relations between the 2 countries, between UK and Mongolia. So having benefited from this scholarship, I also wanted to give something back to the scheme, which is why the British School of Ulaanbaatar sort of sparked my interest, because as a provider of British education in Ulaanbaatar, I felt like I could contribute in facilitating this process and make my own contribution towards it, which is why I joined the school. However, it was a very alien concept to me, because I thought, whilst it's got British as a name in it, it was still a school for me. And at that time, my understanding is school is comprised of teachers. So the only people who work in school are teachers.
Right.
However, it's just like any other organization. It's comprised of different units. And when I first joined the British School of Ulaanbaatar in 2015, October 2015, I joined as the administrative coordinator. So there's the administration side, and then there's the academic side. And I worked in administration
So you
for over
don't
2 years.
directly work with children?
When I first started, I didn't.
But now you do.
Now, to some extent, I do. More so than when I was in administration. However, I'm unable to spend a whole lot of time with the children in the classrooms because our qualified teachers are working away with their children.
So from working in the education sector, where do you get the pleasure? You have to have fun at some point, right? I mean, what's nice about working in education at school?
First of all, it's a very different environment to what I'm used to working at the bank. The bank is comprised of young professionals and very experienced individuals. However, working at the school, the dynamics and the environment is entirely different. It's full of laughter. Every day is a different day. There are instances, there are challenges, but the rewards that you get from it are substantially large, because if one child does something as best as they could, and they have made progress and they have achieved, that's a great level of satisfaction that you get because you have facilitated and contributed towards that process. So in terms of energy, it's a very buzzing place. It's very loud, but it's full of laughter.
Do you get tired after work?
No, I don't.
No?
I don't.
Well, I have a one kid. I get tired after playing with him for like an hour max, and I get tired. But I mean, working at school, it takes lots of energy, doesn't it?
Yeah, but it also recharges you with energy as well. So it's a give and take process. For example, like what would be different in a school meeting is sometimes, we have themed days. So all of our teachers, if we have animal day, they'll come dressed as animals. And then obviously we'll have our management meetings, right? So there we are sitting around the corporate boardroom with different outfits on. That's a very different environment to what I'm used to in a bank, where everyone's, wearing a suit and a tie. So it's a very, very positive and enriching and rewarding experience for me.
I want to ask about, well, for our audience, I want to ask about this international education system, international education curriculum. What's the process of bringing this international? It doesn't have to be only UK education, but any other country. But what's the process to bring the curriculum to Mongolia, and then make it fit into Mongolian ground?
Certainly, in Ulaanbaatar, there are several schools which are offering different kinds of curriculums, so-called international curriculums. And for me, how I would explain it is basically it's a different curriculum. What that means is, you can pursue an American curriculum, you can pursue the International Baccalaureate curriculum, which I was educated in when I was in Brussels, and the school that I work at, the British School of Ulaanbaatar, offers the British National Curriculum. And the language of instruction in all of them is English. However, the extracurricular activities and the academics and the time spent in each of the components is slightly different. What schools prioritize, what the curriculum prioritizes is different. For example, the British curriculum in your upper years, so when you're about to graduate in your sixth form, it focuses on few subjects but in depth. But for example, the International Baccalaureate curriculum, it focuses on several subjects, so it's there's more breadth than depth. So for parents who are, making a decision as to which school or which curriculum to send their child into, I would advise, first of all, start off with the curriculum. What are the skills? What are the academic knowledge that your child is going to be provided with? But also, the key to successfully delivering the international curriculum is the qualified teachers.
Qualified teachers, right. So how many qualified teachers do you have? I mean, how do you qualify your teachers? How do you find your teachers?
Finding qualified teachers is a very long but very detailed process. For our school, we are looking for British qualified teachers who are able to teach their own British national curriculum. So most of our teachers would either come from the UK, where they've recently graduated or have worked for a few years, but there's also teachers who have worked internationally as well. And the biggest challenge that we currently face is, it's not only in our case, but it involves most of the international schools abroad, is that you are competing for a limited pool of qualified teachers. The UK prepares those teachers.
How limited is the pool? Is it quite small? Huh?
It's quite small because there's recent surveys and studies saying that the individuals who are pursuing a teaching degree in the UK is dropping. It's reducing, so there's fewer people being prepared. But also some of them, obviously, due to family relations or different kinds of situations, they choose to stay and work in the UK. So those who have made the decision to go internationally, we are competing for them with other British international schools in Dubai, in Moscow, in Hong Kong.
How many branches are there?
The British schools, they can be privately owned, so they can be independent
Uh-huh.
schools. They don't necessarily have to be
Oh,
sort
right.
of branches of each other.
Okay.
So in our case, our school is a locally invested school. So the founder and the shareholders of the school are Mongolian individuals. However, they facilitate the process of providing a quality British education to Mongolian children by bringing those teachers, those supplies, resources, textbooks, books to Mongolia.
Well, you are being prepared under Karen Mott, right?
Yes.
What is the most important lesson or experience that you are learning from this person?
Like I said, I'm really grateful for the good things that have happened in my life, and one of the fortunate things that have happened is when Miss Karen Mort was appointed as the head of school to the British School of Ulaanbaatar last year, so 2 years ago. And she is a global educationalist who had worked overseas and in the UK for over 30 years. So the best practices and the experience that she possesses is immense. And to be working directly under her guidance and leadership, I feel very fortunate for that. And within 5 years, I'm hoping that I would be able to be prepared to lead the school, in the future. Yeah.
And what's the essence of her teachings? But what is she teaching you?
Professionalism. How to be professional, yeah. Because in the school, and of course in all situations, there will be challenges, there will be good times, there will be hard times, there will be rough times. But in it, you have to maintain your integrity as an individual and maintain your professionalism. And that's something that I very much look up to her for.
Well, let's talk about your personal philosophy towards life. You defined yourself as lucky, no, fortunate, right? Why?
I think it would have been hard to be where I am today if there were different circumstances. Had I not gone to Belgium, had I not pursued my degree in Canada, had I not worked in savings bank, and then later was fortunate enough to receive the scholarship.
How do you see your future now at this moment?
My future, well, I definitely see it here in Mongolia.
In Mongolia?
In Mongolia. This is where home is. And I do believe that if you take the time, and there's lots of opportunities in Mongolia that you can make for yourself. Therefore, I think I will be living and working in Mongolia. And like I've said before, my goal is to become more experienced in the job that I'm doing now under the guidance and leadership of my head.
This is the decision you've made.
You
want to go with the education sector?
Certainly. I do want to, because it's a very rewarding experience, because you're making a contribution towards shaping a whole individual who can go off and accomplish very many things. So this is a very enriching and rewarding experience. So that's where I see my future at the British School of Ulaanbaatar, and definitely in Mongolia.
In education sector, in Mongolia, not abroad, not in Western. We have come to the end, but I have to ask you this question. It's a master question. Are you a proud Mongolian?
Very much so.
Very much so. Okay.
And I think.
Okay. If I'm to ask you to name one thing that you are proud about Mongolia, what would that be? Please be specific.
I think it would be the fact, it would be more related to Mongolian people, the qualities that they possess, because they're very resilient. However, they are very adaptable and flexible. So I think this is a quality. And I think they're talented in learning new things and adapting. So I think these are the qualities which have certainly helped me, but also will down for very many generations. And that's Mongolian people. I'm amazed by the fact how resilient and flexible and adaptable Mongolian people can be.
Resilient, adaptable,
flexible.
Okay. Very well. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
And I wish you good health and good luck.
Likewise.
Thank you. Well, that's all for today. We will see you for the next episode with another guest. I hope you enjoyed our talk. Bye-bye. See you next time.